Fnatic topple G2 and are your spring split champions.
3 rookies prove themselves worthy of the top 4 in the EU LCS.
A double kill from Perks! This guy is a madman! He can do it! Oh, Memento! You beautiful man!
Guess the Quadra gonna be a pacer for Kobe!
It's time to find out who will rise. This is the EU LCS. Welcome back to Berlin, Germany, in the EU LCS Regional Qualifier, aka the Gauntlet. After taking down Misfits Gaming yesterday, Splyce are gearing up for a showdown with G2 eSports. Jankos donning the Madrid G2 jersey. I guess, you know, you gotta do it. I heard it was sold out, but it's good that they're still rocking it. Beautiful jerseys, and it reminds us of Madrid, which is always good. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, joined by Andrew Verius Day and Fabian Sheepy Melant. Sheepy, you're back here. Verius, you casted the Onslaught yesterday.
Yes.
What are your expectations for the rest of the Gauntlet?
Well, I think that we're in for a lot more games. That's guaranteed. And I think it's still relatively close as to who will be able to make it through. I think Splyce showed a lot of good stuff yesterday, but I'm expecting G2 to come in prepared to today's series.
Definitely so.
Yeah, and I hope that G2 has made their homework. Yesterday they already saw 5 games of Splyce, so that's obviously an advantage, but we haven't seen much of G2, so I'm very excited as well.
We haven't, and that's the excitement of the Gauntlet and the regional qualifiers, and they're going on all over the world right now. LCK has their last leg tomorrow. LPLs is going on right now. Later today, we have TSM versus Equifax. For me, it's always one of the most riveting parts of the year.
Yeah, because you still got to determine who that final seed is for Worlds, and third seeds always have a surprise factor when they get to the World Championship. We think back to WE last year, Fnatic as well, Cloud9. A lot of the third seeds often doing a lot more than many expect them to.
And we started off at a great foot yesterday in the Gauntlet here in EU. 5 games in Splyce versus Misfits. And Verius, you've got some Splycey highlights for us.
Yes, I do, Shocks. Let's run you through what happened yesterday, because we did go to 5 games. So things started off a little bit slow, but things started to pick up as the series went on, largely from the Splyce boys. We saw a lot more early game action coming out from the jungle. Xerxes largely investing his time into the bot lane, but really stopping a lot of the early playmaking that Maxtor tried to make. Every time they tried to force a play, this man was there, ready to turn it around in Splyce's favor. That doesn't mean that Splyce couldn't still fight in the late game, though, because we get to see yesterday how proficient their 5v5 team fighting was. We get to see a bit of a replay around the Drake where they just demolish Misfits, and they did this multiple times throughout the series. Odoamne on his own, the positioning of Niski, the saves that constantly came out from Kasing, everything seemed to come together. But the main man we had to highlight is Kobe. This guy was a huge star in the best of 5 yesterday, consistently putting up huge damage numbers, even bringing out the Vayne in Game 5. He was a huge part of why Splyce were able to get the victory in the end and lead his team to the next stage of the goal.
And in the end, Kobe also snagged up the player of the series vote. I think it fits perfectly in the picture of Splyce. We know they like to brawl in the late game, but it is wonderful to see that this guy at the end of the season is pulling his weight and stepping up as the main carry for the team.
Yeah, and he's absolutely the centerpiece of the entire team. Everybody's drafting around him. They pick Tam Kench. They play now top lane tanks, which is way better for them. And yeah, team fights in the late game. This guy is really stepping up. In the qualifiers, already playing 5 different champions. Now he is really stepping up as well. And yeah, I mean, the damage numbers are speaking for themselves. And even in Game 5, he's playing a Vayne.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't...
And these weren't even his best damage numbers. His better damage numbers came up in his losses, where he was getting over 1,000 damage per minute. So really goes to show how much he has been stepping up this series. And I think this is great for later on. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but now I feel they have 2 carry threats rather than just 1.
Yeah, we will in a bit. Let's take a look at what road they still have to go through if they want to get to Worlds. That was only the very first test, and it was a big one, I have to say. Misfits is no slouch, and it took a lot for Splyce to beat them. 5 games, and today they go up against the 4-time EU LCS champion, the organization G2, and whoever wins here then goes up against the final boss, Schalke. Sheepy, it just goes to show that if you start here or even in the 2nd position, it is very intense having to play 3 best of 5s in 3 days.
Yeah, and they are really having menacing opponents coming up. G2 and Schalke both, you know, Schalke looked really, really strong. G2 has the history of being really strong. Usually you would come out of the game against Misfit, you say Misfit beat G2 3-0. You know, they should be well prepared, but that's not the entire story. We have not seen G2 for 3 weeks, so yeah, Splyce really has an uphill battle here, and like you said before, nobody has yet made finals, so it would be really a one-of-a-kind of Splyce makes it all the way and actually wins.
It has never happened. The one or the team in Europe that starts in the first round has never qualified for Worlds, but the first round has also never gone to 5 games. So they've broken the mold there. We'll see what else they can do. And as a reminder, what the teams are fighting for this weekend, they are fighting to become the 3rd seed out of Europe to play at the World Championship. Then they will start in the play-in stage where they will find themselves in groups with 3 other teams. The top 2 out of each group advances to the best of 5s, and the 4 best team out of play-ins eventually qualify for the group stage. And when we look at the teams that have already qualified for play-ins, a lot of familiar faces from MSI and a lot of tough opponents possibly for our guys.
Well, that's what's really exciting because I always have low expectations for some of the teams and then they end up surprising, and then we have high expectations for some teams and then they often disappoint. And some of the teams that I have my eyes on will be Gambit and Direwolves. Like Gambit always come in as like big favorites. We saw them have a really solid performance in the plains at MSI, but then they couldn't quite get past the LMS. Whereas the Direwolves, like they always haven't quite been able to perform on an international stage, but they always upset. They always get that one win to kind of throw open the whole group. So 2 very exciting teams for me coming into the World's Play-in.
Also, most recently, Detonation Focus Me has qualified out of the LGL. I believe we saw Rampage last time around at MSI. Now it's back time for Detonation Focus Me. So we'll see how everything plays out. Of course, if you end in the top 4 of the plains, you can go on to the group stage of Worlds, and then you will join the 1st and 2nd seeds from all major regions and the 3 seeds from the LCK. As said, a lot is in progress right now in the LPL. Did the game finish? I'm not exactly sure. And of course, G2 Esports, Splyce, and Schalke still in the running over in the EULCS.
Yes, I believe the fact that it says Edward Gaming there means that JDG did end up losing to EDG. So 2 teams left to be decided, or well, 1 team from each region, but still a lot of really exciting games. You already talked about it. Korea ends tomorrow. I think LPL has another game tomorrow as well. And then all the gauntlets conclude, I think, tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be a big day, but we still have some big matches coming up today.
And this is why we are so thrilled to go into the matches today. As said, if you're out, your year is completely over. And if you're in, you have to keep fighting, and you might just very well find yourself amongst the greatest of the worlds in the group stage in just a couple of weeks.
And it looks really stacked this year as well. RNG and Invictus Gaming looked terrifying in the LPL finals yesterday. KT Rolster as well are a very scary team. Like, I think we're going to have a lot of good competition this year.
Well, as we're looking ahead anyway, and we're deciding our 3rd seed over the weekend, let's look ahead to some of the teams that have already qualified, most notably from EU. Our 1st seed, Fnatic, they have dominated Europe in 2018. They will be starting in the group stage of the World Championship, and we are very eager to see how they can perform this time around. When you look at their year in review, Sheepy, they were head and shoulders above any other competition in Europe.
Yeah. Fnatic right now is such an exciting team. They have been so successful throughout the year, always top of the standings. And honestly, the way that they are playing and the you know, the champions that they are playing as well, they're always up for something. They played Wukong. Caps is somebody who's innovating, but also playing really, really solid. And now with Reckless coming back as well with the ADC meta, I think they're just a super well-rounded team. Having 2 people for the top lane, it's really hard to exactly prepare for them. So I think Fnatic right now deservedly 1st place in Europe.
And VODS, if I look at the 2018 success and the pedigree of Fnatic, it does make me think back to 2015, the Huni Rainover era. Where would you put their relative strength compared to that?
Ooh, relative strength. That's definitely an interesting question. I would say right now that they're actually very close. To me, it feels like they're on a similar trajectory to what we saw in 2015. Remember, they won the spring split, not as convincingly, couple question marks, couple, how's it going? Then they went to MSI, they took SKT to 5 games, and they finished top 4 still. This year, spring split looked pretty good, a little over-reliant on Reckless maybe, but then in MSI finished top 4 again. They dominated summer, they've dominated summer again. Therefore, we're looking at a top 4 worlds for Europe. Guaranteed, without a doubt, it's the year of Fnatic again.
I mean, all joking aside, I think that is a realistic expectation they should aim for. You know, they want to do better than they did last year. They got to the quarterfinals, and if we think back to 2017, Fnatic qualified as a 3rd seed out of Europe. They went through play-ins, stumbled a little bit, then stumbled massively in the group stage of Worlds. They went 0-4, but miraculously came back. How different are we looking at their start now in group stage? Should they even find themselves anything close to that position? I don't think so.
Well, I think this time around they'll be the 1st seed, so you would hope they would get a slightly easier group.
IG and Kingzone.
Yeah, we know it's going to happen. But also, like, the difference between last year and this year is Caps and Broxah are no longer international rookies. The team has also expanded their repertoire of styles in that they can actually play around the mid laner. They're not over-reliant on their AD carry Reckless. And the fact that they can interchange their top laner, they just have a wealth of options that I think will really offer a lot of value coming into best of ones. And we've been practicing best of ones for a whole year now.
Yeah.
I feel that's also going to benefit them in the group stage.
Is Caps a top 10 player in the world?
I think he's a top 5 player.
Definitely.
There we go. So going off that pedigree and knowing what he showed at MSI, we have high hopes for Fnatic and for Europe. You can't blame us. Tomorrow we will be previewing Vitality going into Worlds. But for now, we're going over to some other great moments, some moments to live and die for. The pinnacle of League of Legends all over the world in My Face When. Now, how this works is, we have actually, do we have our reaction boards?
Do we have
That's a great question. We're getting them.
just
so
we just react
a little
on
bit.
spot.
So how it works, we're going to get the graphic up in a second, is we have My Face When that are based on emotes that run in the game. We've joined some new ones, or we've gotten some new ones, and we want you guys to react what we're putting up on the screen at home by spamming in chat Deficio, oh, sad, Russ. Are you serious? Not Russers.
Russers.
And oh, so first let's look at the new emotes we have.
So Deficio face, I love this addition. Not available in-game yet, but maybe in the future. O is obviously one of the new ones that is available on the store due to the Odyssey introduction. And then we've got Are You Serious? I think this is my favorite one because of how intently you can think about how much I question this play.
Yeah, this is a live production. As such, we have, in fact, forgotten our thing. So, for the first one, I want you guys to make the face of the one you want to do.
Perfect.
Okay?
I like the deathless there.
So we're getting the actual attributes, but let's start it like this. First up, we have Fnatic, who faced off against Schalke 04 last week in our finals, and an unlikely pick from Caps through his support for a loop. Let's take a look.
Actually, I think they'll blind TF, by the way.
They can even go TF against it, but they have
No,
Silver,
TF
so...
is not so good against the comp right now.
Yeah. Oh, Galio. Oh my Jesus, Dylan. Oh my Jesus, Dylan, we have to go main.
No, we have to go Corki.
No, Olaf Galio. Alisai, we're going main, by the way.
Are you serious?
Is Trundle main?
Shouldn't we just go Corki?
But are you serious? Is it gonna win us the game?
Of course.
Ellie's face is so good.
Everyone is immediately like...
Yeah. I think it was Are You Serious from Broxah. Even as a coach, you know, Dylan was literally like,
Are you serious?
I'm sorry, I'm the Deficio face. Like, I'm dead inside.
There we go. Very cunning. Very good.
Very good.
Well, the bad news is we don't actually have the physical attributes. So the good news is you guys can make funny faces for the rest of the segments. I think the Deficio one is just popular because people want to see that ridiculous face all the time. I do think Are You Serious should be one here. But let's see what we get in the new one. Fnatic, they of course went on famously to win their 7th EULCS title in Madrid. But a look behind the scenes shows they almost dropped something as well.
On for so long, it was Bwipo who held that mantle until we got later in the season. With the return of two incredible players, incredible talents in Europe, we see QuickShot getting ready to speak to both of them, to talk to them about this glorious moment later in the season. With the return of two incredible players.
Did he seriously nearly drop that?
Oh my god, but the mechanics, you know that...
There we go.
Got it.
So this one, I think this one is a bit delayed, or it could also be Caps. Are you serious?
Yeah.
To
I
me,
think
that's like, that's like an O. You know?
I think Trevor is more like, Trevor's like, are you serious? Did you just almost drop it?
It's just like,
I mean, I've seen that thing is pretty heavy, and I think it's pretty well made, but I also think it might have just like completely fallen apart.
But I do like the, yeah, you can see a lot of people jumping on
the O is also very good.
Oh.
All right, there we go then. Also a nice memory of Madrid. Caps was so excited. We'll forgive him. Another thing is when we were in Madrid, we were also in Oakland. Well, we weren't, but the NALCS, you know what I mean. The NALCS finals were held in Oakland, and they had some surprises of their own. Let's take a look.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I want to welcome Tyler One to the desk.
Hey.
He's got to help us break down this best of 5. I was honored to be involved in the TCS, and I'm equally as honored to have you.
Again, buddy. It's been a while.
I know. We have a rapport that we've established. I've grown a few inches.
I was told this was going to be Tyler going in for the hug with Jat. The night, but we didn't see that.
I like that he wears a tank top, you know?
Yeah.
Makes me sad.
Really?
And the reason why it makes me sad is Tyler One's coming for my job. Yeah, help me. This guy's help me. How can I compete with that?
He's also a lot more more buff than you.
Yeah,
Whoa,
exactly.
what, did we have to throw that one out there? But it's true. What do I do, Sheezy?
Yeah.
I need to
Run.
bench more.
You just, as he goes up, you go down like this.
I want to keep it running just a little bit because the O is also
I
still
think
from
the O is-
previous one. And the,
Yeah.
But they all could also be very surprised. You know, they
Yeah.
see him for the, oh, hello.
But also like, oh.
Finally, the last one. Yesterday, Splyce took down Misfits and they advanced to today's match against G2. And when watching the series, there was an interesting tweet coming out from G2's Wonder. He shared, "Today is just a show match. Both of these teams stand 0 chances against us." I also think today, earlier, he just sent out a similar kind of edgy tweet.
A bunch of them are.
a
We got one
bunch
from
of them.
Wadid. We've seen one from Perks.
I think Perks is
Yeah.
his gold when he is like, it's win-win. We either go vacation or we go Worlds.
What do you guys react?
On
Like, are
point.
you serious? Oh, sad. Deficio. What would you? Deficio maybe.
I think my initial reaction was, oh, again,
Yeah,
I was
same.
like, oh, this is some spicy stuff that we got coming from G2. I also, a part of me thinks, you guys got 3-0'd by Misfits the last time we saw them
Yeah.
play. Are you really
No, definitely disappointed that Deficio is winning.
I think the
for
Deficio
wondering
stare is
about.
also like, you can't do that.
All right, great. Well, that does set us up nicely. Those words from Wonder. Thank you very much for voting at home, by the way. Those words from Wonder for our match today. A monumental series, all jokes aside. The 4-time EULCS champions G2 facing off against Splyce. Now, before we get into the matchup and the nitty-gritty, here's what G2's coach had to say.
Thank you so much. I am here with Grabs, the coach of G2. Now, Grabs, coming into the Misfits series in quarterfinals, it didn't seem like you guys had it all together. What went wrong for you coming into those quarterfinals?
The practice, basically. I think we had one of the worst weeks we ever had as G2 when going into the series. So we kind of had like fake confidence and we're like telling, it's fine, guys, but we all knew, okay, it's really not fine. And it's probably going to go haywire. So for this week, practice has been way better and we're very confident that we actually will be very dominant in our series against Splyce.
So were you actually able to identify what was causing the problems with practice, or was it just a general feeling in the team?
Honestly, I think it's a lack of not pressure, but how you say it, you deflate, because we had our final against Vitality, basically, for second place. We lose it. Tiebreaker, we lose it. Against Schalke, we lose it. So it's kind of, we were so tense for getting the bye, and we didn't get it, so people just deflate, right? And it was really hard for us to pick up the pace again, especially because we have to play the next week. So people second-guessed everything, and even the simplest things went wrong in scrims. So that also showed on stage, like the second game against Misfits, which we should have won very easily, but everything went wrong. So we took a break off of League completely, and it helped a lot.
Okay, and talking about sort of the losing spree that you guys have been on recently, you have Splyce who've coming off a win in a best-of-5 yesterday. Does that worry you? Are you concerned that they have more momentum coming into this series?
Not at all. If we just play our game, we're a better team, and I hope we can show it today.
That is definitely the hope. G2 across the course of this year may be struggling a little bit to live up to expectations. If you don't make it to Worlds, would you call that a failure for G2?
I mean, definitely. And I think even now, the season is not as, like, we always want to win, right? So even if we go to Worlds, it's still kind of a failure, and we have to kind of salvage the season at Worlds. But that's just something we all think. Like, there's no outside pressure. We all want to win. So we always have to high expectations on ourselves. No, it's about salvage the season.
Yeah, you've got to win these games if you're going to make it to Worlds. Thank you very much. Good luck today. Back to you guys.
Well then, Grabs is on point. Of course, it would be a huge disappointment if G2 eSports with Perks don't make it to Worlds. They are the guys that have reigned supreme, the organization then in Europe, for 4 splits straight in 2016 and 2017. But with this new lineup in 2018, it was different. In spring, though, I think they surprised many by still making it to the final.
Exactly that, Shox. I think that there were many question marks around, is Hyun and Wadid really going to be a strong enough replacement for Sven and Mithy? How is Jankos and Wonder going to fit into this lineup? And while they had a bit of a rocky split, they still made it to the final, and they couldn't quite compete against Fnatic, but expectations were high. This summer split, they went 6-0 in the first half, and everyone kind of had, this is the G2 that everyone was waiting for.
Now, I do want to look at this timeline because it looks pretty good. As you say, they went 6-0, and then they picked up a reasonable amount of wins in the second half. But I think when Funnel disappeared, we all noticed, probably you guys also in playing them, that it just wasn't as crisp anymore as it had been in the beginning of the split.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point, that we're not so crisp anymore. If we're seeing the stats before, we really thought that G2, winning so many games throughout the split was one of the top 3 contenders in EU. And it was really puzzling for me when I see them lose so hard against Misfit as well, 0-3. I think nobody was expecting that. Even though that they lost some games before, you were still saying, this is G2, this is the organization we know, and they have veterans like Perks and Hyanen. So yeah, very, very surprising. And I think today they have a lot to redeem for themselves.
I agree. We just look at the numbers for the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Absolutely damning. They lost the plot completely, and as Grab said there, now they have to save their season. They have to get to Worlds and have to save it there if possible. And we're looking at Perks. He is the only guy remaining on the roster, and him together with Jankos are really the guys that I'm looking at today to make the change happen and to make them win.
Yeah, I think so. He's kind of the main superstar of the team. We've seen that for Fnatic, when you play through mid, you can win games. And I feel like what we need to see is just this shift in mentality from G2 where they better enable their mid laner and just put him in a position where he can be the carry that he was back in last year of 2017.
Yeah, we will see what Perks can do today together with Jankos, but as we count down towards this series, Dracos does have one important tip for G2 and their top laner. Walk us through it, man.
Well, Shox, I mean, it's simple. There's a champion. It's on everyone's mind. 816 is starting to develop. It's starting to settle. I mean, you could call him terrifying, frustrating, confusing. These are the words you'd probably associate with, well, that's right, folks. It's Gangplank. Very important. That guy who, don't worry about that guy. Anyway, this Pirate has been plundering his way through Premier Leagues like the NALCS. You've been seeing some incredible performances from top laners like Someday, like Impact. Truly world-class talent. Of course, EU is no stranger to the champion, and for G2, Wonder has been incredible. In spring, he carried the team from the top lane, obliterating the opposition, was hands down the champion that you had to take away from this guy or lose, and you could see it here. He's going through, he's crushing team fights, he's making his impact known, and just generally, this was the nightmare scenario for any team going up against G2, was giving Wonder the likes of a carry in the top lane, and specifically that Gangplank. But now, in the summer split, it's time, folks. It's time for G2 to step up. It's time for them to take it to the next level. It's time for them to never pick GP again, please, for the love of God. Wonder's been solo killed 3 times in lane this split. 3 times in competitive. 2 of them in the same quarterfinals game. When Wonder came back from Rift Rivals, we were all feeling it. We all thought it looked good. We saw the Aatrox. We saw him crush. We're thinking best top laner in the West. And then what happens? He comes back to Europe. He gets solo killed immediately as Gangplank, dies in lane, and everything goes south. Now, this isn't to say that Wonder is a bad GP, but I'm tired of watching an incredible carry top laner, the carry top laner for G2, farm it out for 20 minutes, throw an ulti to save a little bit of pressure, and then really just have the game end before he can even participate. Either put this man on a tank, like the rest of the meta, like the rest of the top laners, or put him on a carry that can actually impact the game early and isn't just going to sit around and farm. So as a reminder, no matter what you do today, G2, just remember, please don't pick Gangplank.
Tell us how you really feel. Interesting. I wonder if they have like different scenarios, of course. You know, Grab is in the team, and they have like 5 of the 10 includes picking Gangplank, and now they're like, Jesus Christ, okay, yeah.
So we gotta listen to Dracos. There's no.
What do you guys think?
But I agree with Dracos. I think that what the team has shown is that they cannot play around Wonder when he's on a carry. And the Gangplank, he's had a poor performance on it as well. So I think
Is it him or is it the champion in the current meta?
I think it's Wonder. I purely think it's Wonder.
Oh.
You should not be dying 1v1 on that. The whole reason you pick Gangplank is to survive and get through the laning phase. And the fact that Wonder is dying on it kind of goes away from this big carry style that Dracos was alluding to, where we consider him the best in the West coming after Rift Rivals.
So as a coach, Sheepy, if you hear someone from the broadcast saying that, but you know that Wonder has told you before that he likes to play it and he thinks it's good, where do you go?
I mean, if it's Dracos, you know, I would scrap it and like do the pick and ban new on the spot. But on a more serious note, I really think that if a player has faith in their champion and has a really, you know, a good reason why he's picking it, and you're making a draft around it, and it has success in scrims, then you should pick it. Yeah, but if you don't have the success, I think then it's time to change it up. And, you know, sometimes it's also a reminder that the meta goes somewhere else.
Yeah, and it is crunch time now. They have to know exactly what they want to play and what's going to work for them if they want to make it to Worlds. And to do that, they also have to beat Splyce. Splyce is currently on a high. They went all the way to 5 games yesterday versus Misfits, who were slightly favored, I feel, in that matchup. But they grinded it out on the back of Kobbe.
Yes, they did. Kobbe had a phenomenal series. We talked a little bit about it earlier on, but this guy's damage numbers were phenomenal yesterday. Not only was he continuously winning lane alongside Kasing, but also his positioning and damage output in team fights was just spectacular. You never saw him getting caught out. You never saw him overstepping or taking gambles. He was just really reliable, really consistent, and he was the reason why Splyce won yesterday.
And he's also not the only carry on that team, but there's a couple of other things maybe they'll need to enable to win today. What would you say are the main keys to victory for Splyce, Sheepy?
I honestly believe what they they did yesterday and what worked best is put Odoamne on the tank and just play around Kobbie's teamfight prowess. I think Niski did pretty well as well on the new matchups when the enemy could pick like an Urgot or something passive where you literally cannot lose lane. I think it didn't work out well for them. So give Niski a counter pick, put Odoamne on something, and then play around Kobbie because this guy has been going off. And I think that Splyce probably, if G2 is really prepared, then they will have some plans for the early game. But if it goes 25 to 35 minutes, I think this is where Splyce should shine.
What I think is an interesting sign of the times is that last year you would have put something in there about protecting Niski and whatnot. But I think the combination of Perkz not being on his top form in the last couple of weeks and Niski playing extremely well kind of negates that factor entirely. So what are we looking then at G2? Is there something about mid in there? Do you think they should focus their attention there?
Oh, yes. Yesterday we saw Misfits try to shut Niski down, and while they got him behind, he was more relevant in that game than he was perhaps in any other of the series. And I feel that G2 needs to kind of take a similar strategy, but lock Niski down harder. Get a strong mid-jungle duo. Enable Perkz. Put him in a situation where if he has to go to a side lane or has to match up Niski in team fights, it will always be Perkz that is coming out on top.
And I think those two have really the most to show for themselves as well, because we were really disappointed, me personally as well, in Perkz and Jankos. Those have been legends in the ULCS for such a long time, really people that stand out and have been very vocal as well. And I think they really need to step up for their team if they want to win today.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Of course, Odoamne and Jankos both played in Madison Square Garden a couple of years ago when they played at the World Championship. It's something you may forget. Perkz is a guy that has been there a couple of times now, and there's a lot of faces here that you can't imagine not being there that I think goes the most for Perkz and the rest. And then there's also a lot of faces that you would love to see at Worlds, and a couple of people on Splyce that want that experience and are hungry for it, but they're going to have to win 2 best-of-5s in a row to do it.
I think it's important to remember that G2 have been Europe's first seed representative for the last 2 years. They have been the ones that many European fans have put their faith in and unfortunately have been disappointed by. And now many are kind of looking at Fnatic to be the next generation or the next kind of upbringing for Europe. But for G2 to not be there, given their pedigree and given their history, it would be very surprising. So we already heard it from Grabs. They have high expectations on themselves. We'll have to hope that they don't allow that pressure to result in a similar performance to what they had versus Misfits.
Yeah, great point. And Splyce, of course, tipped from some of the pros in Madrid and PGL as the guys who could make the epic run. They've got the momentum. They know that they just beat Misfits and they have to go strong against G2. So let's take a look at our predictions. Den, yesterday, I found it incredibly hard, and it wasn't easier today. I, in the end, went for G2. I think with all the time they had to regroup, Grab said it as well, I think they can be consistent in the best-of-5s when it matters most. I think Jankos together with Perkz will be able to hold their own. But even when I say it now, I know that that it's so close. It's a game of inches for me here today.
Yeah, for me, it's more in faith than actual. Because for G2, we haven't seen them in 3 weeks, so we really, really can't judge it. But for me, it's just way more exciting to expect from G2 this kind of team that's very, very aggressive in some cases, know how to play, have this mechanical outplays, and have those really, really strong players. And that's what I'm hoping for. Even though Splyce having them win here and maybe go towards, I think there's other teams that do the same as Splyce but just better. I think Fnatic does it better. I think Vitality is more aggressive and is a different style. And I think G2, in their prime, how they played, would be a really nice roundup for ULCS.
And I think we're just going to see a revitalized G2. I think you talked about it. We haven't seen them play in a while. Shox, you alluded to it in that you just kind of have that faith and expectation that the carries will step up. And that's just what I'm looking at. I think Perkz will have a great game. I'm really excited to see Wadid be put back on carries and kind of make these plays to set up his team. And I just think that given all the information they've been able to see from Splyce yesterday, it's going to be a G2 3-1.
Many times this split public opinion has been against Splyce in the predictions, and many times they managed to surprise, but this might be the most important time they need to do it. It is do or die for both these teams if they want to make it to the World Championship. Let's see who comes out on top and go over to our casters.
Thank you very much, Shox. I'm Dan Dracos here with, I can say this for the final time as the split is over, the Moose on the loose, Martin official along.
Actually, it was only during regular season. It's gone.
Okay, we call that a freebie, I guess. Here we are, Splyce versus G2 eSports after an intense 5-game series yesterday. Splyce now looking to keep the streak going as they take down G2. And despite not having seen anything in 3 weeks from G2 eSports, the faith is alive from the analyst desk.
I'm actually